friend river, who had only been waiting for these words, flowed quickly out, as strong as a storm and as swift as the wind, and she put out the fire and drowned all the people that had kindled it, and gloop, 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 she flowed into the king's palace, and stood 4 feet deep in the great hall, and Drakesbill, spruce and fresh as ever, swam hither and thither, singing, "Quack, quack, quack, when shall I get my money back?" Of course, after all this had happened, the king was more angry than he had ever been before, and when he saw Drakesbill swinging about so coolly while he had to stand on the table to keep his feet dry, he could hardly hold himself. "Bring the fellow here, and I'll finish him with the carving knife. Bring him here quick," he cried. 2 servants rushed out and seized Drakesbill very rudely. They dragged him towards the king, who was standing with drawn carving knife. The king's brave men, with swords in their hands, were all around him. "It is all over with me now," said Drakesbill. "I don't see how I can live through this." But just then he thought of his neighbor Wasp Nest, and he cried out, Wasp Nest, hither fly, or Drakesbill soon will have to die." Then Wasp Nest, who had been waiting for these words, began to wake up his wasps, and things changed very quickly. "Buzz, buzz, buzz, charge!" cried Wasp Nest, and the wasps rushed out and threw themselves upon the king and his brave men, and stung them so badly that they ran and jumped right out from the windows, and nobody in the palace ever saw them again. As for Drakesbill, he could only sit still and wonder what was going to happen next. But after a while he remembered his money, and began to sing as before. Then, as the house was very still, he thought that he might as well look around a little while. Perhaps he would find his 100 yellow pieces of gold. It was of no use, however. He peeped into all the corners and opened all the drawers. There was not $1 in the house. The king had spent everything. By and by Drakesbill found his way into the room where the king's throne stood, and as he was very tired, he sat down to rest amongst the cushions of velvet and gold. When the people saw the king and his brave men running away from the wasps, they felt sure that they would never come back. So they crowded into the palace to see what was the matter, and the only person they found was little Drakesbill, sitting by himself on the throne. Then they all shouted, "The king is dead! Long live the king! How glad we'll be to be ruled by this thing!" And one of them ran and fetched the golden crown, and they put it on Drakesbill's head, and hailed him as king. And Drakesbill, who had made up his mind not to be surprised at anything, sat very still and took it all as a matter of course. "He doesn't look much like a king," whispered a few idle fellows, but they were soon driven out of the hall and made to understand that it was wrong to even think such words. "He will be the best king we have ever had," said others, and some who had known him before said, "A Drakesbill is better any day than a king who does nothing but spend our money." And that is the way in which our little Drakesbill became king. When he had been crowned, and the people had finished shouting, he made a speech from the throne. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "I am very hungry. Let us all go to supper." End of Drakesbill and His Friends. Recording by Lucas Handley, Wasaga Beach.